I'm of the opinion that an athletic director needs to come out and say, hey, listen, we took the big bat to the plate and swung it as hard as we could. We called Kim Mulkey. We said, listen, we could do 4 million. We called Don Staley and we said, listen, I know you're drinking champagne because you just won a national title, but hey, how about we boost it up by another 500,000? And then if you come to me and say, we got this bright up and young and coming coach, I can jive with somebody getting paid $750,000 to be the Lady Vols head coach. But that in and of itself seems bizarrely low to me. So do you think they took a swing at the other people? Do you have a problem with them going with the discount bargain bonus move?
Well, I think Tennessee had money to spend here. I don't think it was trying to go cheap. I think it might have made a call to somebody like Don Staley and said, is there any interest? What would we need to do? And she says, leave me alone. Don't ever call me again. You can't get the big three. They're not going anywhere. Gino, Mulkey, Staley, they're just not. And so even if you drop down a level and go for Brenda Freeze at Maryland and or maybe Vic Schaefer at Texas, they're not going anywhere either, I don't believe. Maybe Jeff Walls at Louisville, he was interested before. I don't know if there was any interest. Maybe there was no interest in hiring a male coach. But once you get past that, I'm thinking, who's the splash hire? I don't know. And I mean, suppose Tennessee had hired Corey Close at UCLA. She's done a really nice job there and won a national title. That's a hard place to win, and she's won a lot of games. I think she's a good coach. But her name never came up, and I think if Tennessee announced her as a coach, I don't think that would, that wouldn't spike much interest. I think he's made a risky hire, but a hire and as well as anybody, he has a good track record of hiring people that haven't really accomplished the highest level, and then they turned out to be good coaches. So I think he believes in this person. I don't think he just hired her to be cheap. I think he believes she can win here. So,
Caleb, let me ask you this. How often, if you're the athletic director, can you take these hires that are maybe a little bit chancy? I mean, it's easier to do when we're not talking about the football coach, right? But if you say, I like this baseball coach, I think he's going to be really good, but I'm not 100%. I've got some equity because Josh Heupel's won a bunch of games. I'm going to take a shot at this track and field coach or tennis coach or whatever. I mean, I wonder how many times as an athletic director do you take what could be a high risk, high reward decision?
I mean, I think Danny White's whole career is doing that, even with football. I mean, he did it with Josh Heupel. Yeah. The football community was very upset about the Josh Heupel hire because they wanted Hugh Freeze. I don't think anybody wishes they had Hugh Freeze over Josh Heupel in Knoxville now. And so this is Danny White's whole career. Now, could at one point he think too highly of himself and go a little extra? Yeah, the best equivalent I could give, you guys will both know this. Who was the Dallas Cowboys GM in the 70s and the 60s? It was so good at scouting high school talent and built Super Bowl teams.
Tex Schramm?
Was that it?
Gil Brandt was a personnel guy.
Okay.
Yeah, and he thought he was so good that he actually went too creative by the 80s and went out of his way to find unknown high school talent and wrecked the franchise. I guess Danny White could one day down the road do that, where he thinks like, oh, I can find anybody anywhere, and then he'll go hire Jerry Faust to coach the football team out of high school. But I think at this moment, I think that he has a good enough track record to say, I usually don't do this, but for me to put enough faith in him. Now, I wanted to get to real quick, and John, I wanted your thoughts on this, and Dave, you too, but just thinking about what we don't like about the hire, is it a concern to either of you? Because maybe it is to me, particularly from a recruiting perspective, that her entire career is just in West Virginia outside of about 3 years in Sacramento State.
John, I don't have a problem with that. And to go back to the one thing I do like about the hire, I thought it was very decisive and moved. I'm not crazy about the Kalen DeBoer hire, but I was impressed by the way it was carried out and taken care of. I mean, that thing was done in 36 hours. This one is done pretty quick too. And I think it was because they wanted to ask, like a Gottlieb, do you have any opportunity? And she had a Final Four to tend to, and then they moved forward. So the fact that she's just at West Virginia, I don't have a problem with that. Jerry West was pretty good out of West Virginia.
Yeah, I don't know if she's been in a small world, and I look at her roster. What I look at it's not just that she's been in West Virginia, although it's the idea she's going to need to recruit a different kind of player. Her tallest player, she's got I think a 6'1" player, and she had a couple of 6-footers, a lot of 5'8", 5'9" players. I mean, maybe you can win with that in the Sun Belt or certainly in Division II, but she's going to need a different type player. And I think it's really important in recruiting in any sport. If you've been at one level and you've recruited to win at that level and be successful, that you understand when I go to a different level, a higher level, now I'm going to have to upgrade and get a different kind of athlete. What worked for me before won't work here.
I know it's a completely different offense, but let me ask you guys both this, because you guys are really in tune to Lady Vols, so I'm leaning on you. John, I want to start with you. Is it as big of a deal for Tennessee to make a splash get? Like used to be, when you knew that Tennessee got Candace Parker, they were going to win at least one national title, right? When you knew they got the Meeks, they were going to win at least 2 national titles. When UConn got Maya Moore or Brianna Stewart, you're like, they're going to win at least 1 or 2 national titles with those 2 players individually. Are there still players out there like that, or is as the talent level at the top leveled off a little bit? John, I'm going to start with you, and then Caleb, but I just want to get your thoughts as well.
Well, look at South Carolina, the preeminent program right now. Had a 6'7" player who can play the game, shoot, rebound, pass, do all that stuff. Great player. Go back to last year, we had Camila Cardoso, the 6'7" player, and it also had Aaliyah Boston, a 6'5" player of the year, and it still couldn't win the championship. The difference was this year it has a contingent of 3-point shooters. It needed all of that. There's more talent in the game now, so it's harder for you can bring in one great player and still not win at the highest level now. I mean, you go back. Holtzclaw had better players around her. Candace Park had some good players around her, but Candace Parker was a 6'5". I really think she was about 6'6". But anyway, she could play anywhere on the floor. Back then in 2008, yeah, you could be hard to beat that team unless you just had a bunch of stiffs around her. But now I think it takes a stronger team overall. Just one player won't do it. But in the past at Tennessee and at UConn, when they won, they combined for 19 national championships. When those teams won championships, they usually had the best player in the country. Might be Candace Parker, Shamika Holtzclaw, Brianna Stewart, Maya Moore, Diana Taurasi. They always had the best player. That's not enough now.
Caleb, I want to ask you, how much of a benefit would it be purely in recruiting and providing momentum? First, tell you about our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go in there and say Off the Hook Sports sent you. They knock $500 off. They deliver everything to you. Support our sponsors. Go in and say hi to our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas in Athens with their great showroom. Here, the best thing about Dynasty Pools and Spas is that they've got it all taken care of. What does that mean? Well, you stop by their showroom and check out their fantastic selection of top-notch spas in that showroom in Athens. Make your pick and get ready. Because Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers within 125 miles of that location in Athens, that fantastic showroom. They've got the cover lifts, steps, chemicals, and everything you need. Delivery at no extra charge. They're just down the road in Athens. You pick the spa you want, and it'll be there for you. Oftentimes discounted with military and first responders discounts. Also blemish models, or just mention Off the Hook Sports. That's Off the Hook Sports for $500 off. There's a discount for you on spas made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas also has the best chemicals for you and your spa and your pool. No fillers, just the chemicals made right here in East Tennessee. Support local. Dynasty Pools and Spas, $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. $500 off if you mention Off the Hook Sports. Dynasty Pools and Spas, dynastypoolsandspas.com. So, Caleb, let me turn to you. I guess that's what I'm asking. Is there a player out there that, regardless of what they do in the court in college, that could provide a huge boost in recruiting? Or do those players exist anymore?
Not as much as they were. You guys are right. Back in the day, you landed the best player. You went and won titles, plural. But I mean, Caitlin Clark was the best player at Iowa. She came away without a title because South Carolina could just overwhelm her with so much talent on the interior. As for this level, I mean, John, it's funny you bring up about I'm guessing you're saying, so your biggest concern with Caldwell is the recruiting factor, right? Recruiting that type of player for this level.
Yeah, that's one of the factors. I mean, she may be able to do that. I'm just saying she needs to understand she needs to get a different caliber player than what she had where she was. I would assume she understands that.
Yeah, I agree. And it is going to be trickier at this level because now you're needing to get, for her system, you're needing to get like 6'2" and 6'3" players who can run the floor and shoot the three. That's a lot harder to find in the women's game. And that's going to be difficult. I'll say that what I would say is I go back and forth with this, though, because I always wonder, is recruiting easier? And maybe from a football perspective, you guys could tell me, you particularly, Dave, is recruiting easier or harder at the lower levels? Because yes, it's at the lower levels, you're limited in the talent pool. I mean, at the higher levels, you're expected to get the best players. So the expectations are higher. But I feel like it's not as hard to evaluate the talent at the higher levels as it is at the lower levels. Don't you really have to, like, if you're coaching in any sport, don't you really have to do a lot of legwork to identify the talent that'll fit your program if you're at a school like Marshall? And doesn't it become easier if you're at a school like Tennessee?
Yeah, John, I think you would rather be at a place like Tennessee that you can just hop on a flight and go see a kid and be able to probably close a lot of deals that way. It sounds a lot different. You go, I'd like to be up there, but this program you're going to depend on to feed you and take care of you for the next 5 years. We don't have the ability to get up there. Our travel budget's been cut. So you don't want to pass along that message.
No, I just think another thing I like about this hiring, going back to the style of play Caldwell has, it's a very clearly defined style of play. I mean, I always like in any sport when I kind of know what the team is trying to do offensively. You know how you watch some teams like, well, Tennessee under Jeremy Pruitt, that comes to mind. What's he trying to do? What's his, what does a Jeremy Pruitt offense look like? Setting you up for a punchline.
I've got so many I can't choose between.
Yeah, I know. I just can't shake the idea of him with that COVID mask dangling beneath his face.
I just think of Jeremy Pruitt and Butch Jones meeting in the middle of the field, just saying, "I got a better haircut than you." No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Butch Jones at least had an offensive identity. Whether or not you liked him, he at least knew what he wanted to run on offense.
That's true.
Yeah, well, but I think she does. I think she knows exactly what it takes to run her system and make it work. So I think that's really important and really significant. I noticed somebody, one of our listeners, tweeted that Carol Lawson turned down the job. I don't believe that for a minute. I don't think they had any interest whatsoever in Carol Lawson. She burned bridges when she was here and left the board of trustees. they weren't going after Kara Lawson, and her resume at Duke is pretty thin anyway. So I mean, these rumors get started, but they did not want Kara Lawson.
No, I don't even believe she was in consideration.
No, she wasn't.
No. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't think so either. And then the Summit, family probably would have hurt her anyway, because I think Tennessee's trying to steer clear from that altogether. It's funny. Just I will never forget. There's the common basketball hire when you talk about not a system. John, the last place Buzz Peterson was hired at, UNC Wilmington, because I follow former Tennessee coaches. I listen to what they say, and Buzz Peterson at that point said, I'm not one of those arrogant coaches that believes you got to have a system and players fit into it. I believe you adapt to what they do. That's code for I don't know what I'm going to run. And so
that's the exact opposite of when I said, you're trying to get him better. And he goes, well, I'd really like the damn scholarship back. Just run him off the court and out of the program was the goal. It wasn't to make him better. It's like, man, I could use that Scully.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I've got there's very few coaches, David Cutcliffe, one of them, but there's very few coaches I would sit there and say when they say they want to adapt to their personnel, I think that's code for they don't know what they're going to run and they have no idea what they're doing usually.
Well, yeah, Caleb, I agree. I think some coaches, you need to adapt to a certain degree, because a lot of times you take a new job. I mean, I don't think Jalen Milroe at Alabama necessarily fits exactly what Kalen DeBoer wants his quarterback to be able to do, but he's going to have to adapt his system because he's clearly the best quarterback. You've got to be flexible within your system, but you got to have a clearly defined system of what you're trying to do.
That's
exactly.
By the way,
what? Oh, Jalen.
That whole DeBoer and Jalen Milroe thing's not going to work out. DeBoer wants a pocket passer. Jalen Milroe is not that.
Yeah, but I think he can still make that work. I think Alabama can still be pretty good this year.
Okay. I mean, Urban Meyer was
Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, huh? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. And I was going to say, and Urban Meyer was able to tweak his offense for Chris Leak, who was not a fit for his offense at all. And he tweaked his offense. I totally agree. Yeah. They adapt to the personnel. The other one, I'm going to watch the press conference this afternoon. I'm sure you guys will too. If I hear her say my style of play is discipline, if I hear a coach say my focus is instilling discipline, my head's going to explode, because that's the other thing that drives me crazy about coaches when they take over the new job. As if a coach is going to say, I don't think we should have discipline in our program.
Yeah. And we're going to give it all. We're going to give it all for sure. And you're going to see a team that's going to give 110% night in and night out.
I want to make sure these players turn out to be good citizens. That's my
goal. They're not only going to be great players, they're going to be people. They're going to be people that you're proud of.
That's what Jeremy Pruitt said when he was introduced. He was like, "What type of player am I looking for? I want guys who want a degree." Like, that's not what you want, Jeremy Pruitt.
No, I don't care.
Did Jeremy Pruitt get a degree?
GED.